Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a very senior and respected professional and an author talking to us today from Mexico City, Mr. Neil Solomon. Neil, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Neil is an author of a book titled The 1% Door, The Hidden Systems Costing You the Life You Could Be Living, which is releasing on the 14th of July. And by the time this podcast goes live, it should be well past 14th July. Neil is also an entrepreneur, a multi-unit franchisee, an international real estate investor, and executive leader. So, Neil, you began as a mechanical engineer and eventually became a multi-unit franchise owner and an entrepreneur. What were some of the pivotal moments that shaped your journey?
Oh, that's really interesting. So when I was young, I was told to do certain things and I followed all the rules. And I did well in school and I went to college and I did well in college. I had some bumps along the way like everyone, but I got the job and I got a good job and I did really good at it. And then I realized that there's a ceiling in many of these different corporate kind of jobs, unless I wanted to take positions or live in places I didn't want to live. And so I chose family over future career. And it was difficult for me. And there was a difficult time in there where I was struggling with what I was told when I was young versus what I really wanted out of life.
Hmm.
And I think the pivotal moment, and it's really the opening of my book, is I was very good at my job and I was a sales engineer at the time.
Mhm.
And I would help people build systems and so on in their facilities. And I had an opportunity to do a huge project and I made it very successful. And I did 325% of my goal that year.
Mhm.
And the corporate mandate for that is they limit your bonus. And so I was shocked because I really didn't make any money from that.
Mhm.
And what's even worse was it's their process is your next year's goal is based on your last year's actual.
Oh, wow.
So yes, so my goal went up 300%. And I didn't get paid. And I was like, oh my God, where is their fair? And
Hmm.
there was no fair. And I'm like, this is really tough.
Hmm.
And that was the beginning of the journey to become an entrepreneur. Now, there's a lot of entrepreneurs in my family, but I thought, okay, I'm going to be the serious corporate engineer, sales guy, well respected, all these things. And where I ended up was making burritos behind a counter.
Mhm.
And actually loving it. I really, really loved that transition because it was so freeing.
Hmm.
It gave me so many options in life, and that was a pivotal moment. Then there's been many pivotal moments since as to whether to scale the company or keep it the same. Or the main thing was each time I made one of these changes, I say it this way, and it's not literal. The old me had to die,
Wow.
and there had to be a rebirth of a new me
Hmm.
because the old me couldn't do the things that the new me needed to do.
Hmm.
So I had to, and I don't want to use the word reinvent, but I had to imagine what the new me needed to be. And I did that through education, whether it was books or talking to people who've already done it, things like that. But that was really the journey. And
Amazing.
those are the pivotal moments.
Fascinating. What an amazing journey. And
Thank you.
yet you have built businesses across different industries.
Yes.
So my question to you then is that what principles have remained constant regardless of the industry?
So I think it's more about me that I'm a curious person. And so operations is always different. Okay. Sales is a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
Marketing is a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Finance always seems to be the same. Human resources, the same. These are the 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 main parts of corporate entities. So if you can team up or have an operating partner, or what I tend to do is acquire.
Mm-hmm.
I like to acquire companies that are already profitable, that are already doing well in business, and just handle the corporate structure for it,
Mm-hmm.
and have a good team and take care of that team that does the operations.
Mm. Very interesting. What has been your most expensive lesson as a business owner?
I hate to say this, but I guess um, working with family
Mm-hmm.
has been very, very expensive
Correct.
because both emotionally and financially.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, I am a very driven person, and I honestly found it better that the people who I love don't don't join me on this part of the journey. So it's been a very humbling experience because I always thought that I would bring them along, and we're just different people. And as much as I would like to train them, and they have their own ideas of what they
Yeah.
want with their life, and
Yeah.
I get it, and I get it. And that's been a very expensive lesson for me.
Amazing. And therefore, a follow-up question: what is
Yeah.
one habit that has consistently created disproportionate results in your life?
Oh, so that habit is figuring out how to get out of the way.
Hmm.
Okay. There's many leadership books. John Maxwell comes to mind, who talks about you're the lid of the company. You're the limit that your company can grow.
Mm-hmm.
Wherever you are is unless you grow, your company can't. So my process was always to figure out how to do what I do,
Mm-hmm.
which is, what I do is investors, mergers and acquisitions,
Mm.
finance, a little bit of human resources, and putting together systems. My engineering background of creating systems,
Mm-hmm.
and so that's what I'm good at. I like customers. I like being in front of customers. I like talking. I like sales. But if I make a system, I'm the one who is allowed to break it. And the problem is that when you're the CEO, when you're the leader and you break your own systems, you've told everybody else your systems are breakable,
Mm.
and they break them too. So I try and live up to that part of um, honoring the system, of knowing where my role is in the company, getting out of the way. And even some of the things I do, I call it the shower test, is I stay away.
Mm.
And by what I do, what I mean by staying away is I say, okay, I'm going to be out of pocket. If it's new company, new addition, new something, you can't reach me for the next hour or the next day or
Mm.
the next weekend. Okay, can't. So I'll shut off my phone or whatever to see what goes wrong because I'm testing my system.
Sure.
And my greatest achievement
Mm.
was putting. I do it through travel. So I love the reason I make money. I mean, besides taking care of a family, is to see the world.
Correct.
And so when I first started, my first real shower test was I wanted to do a backpacking trip in South America through Machu Picchu and all the lands that are down there.
Mm.
And it was a 6 week trip, and it was really very little contact. So I had 8 months to set that up. And I used different systems until I got on the plane. But I'll tell you, I was not confident when I got on the plane, but I did get on and it did work out and I didn't lose the company. So
Mm.
I've kept that process ever since.
Very interesting. What separates entrepreneurs who build lasting businesses from those who constantly struggle?
Oh, I don't know if anything separates that.
Okay, okay, okay.
I constantly struggle.
Yeah.
I so it, the way I use this metaphor of a sailboat
Hmm.
where you're on the shore and you're sailing somewhere, you can't see where you're going, you know the direction, you know where it's supposed to be, but the wind has a vote, the weather has a vote, there's a sandbar in the way, all these things happen even when you're
Correct.
successful. And then when you get to where you want to go, all of
Yeah.
a sudden there's no place to park. And you're like, oh my God, I did all this and now I'm here and it's still wrong. And
Correct.
so this it's a constant, um, I mean, there's no stop. There's no end point because the world won't allow it. There's always somebody who wants your seat.
Hmm.
And I don't want to say you need to compete with those people who want your seat, but what they want is they want their own.
Hmm.
And so I think in order to keep what you have or grow, you have to constantly find your path
Hmm.
of where your business needs to go and how it needs to change. And you look at even the largest businesses that are out there today,
Hmm.
they're not what they were
Correct.
several years ago.
Correct. Correct. No, you're so right. I mean, I've been an entrepreneur, done many, many startups, and I've always said Murphy's Law applies. Anything that can go wrong will. So, but moving on, Neil, let's come to your book,
Yes,
The
yes,
1% Door, The Hidden Systems
yes,
Costing You the Life You Could Be Living. And
yes.
before I ask you a question, I'm going to ask all our viewers and listeners to go and check out Neil Solomon's book. It's releasing on the 14th of July. My first question for your book is, what is the 1% door in simple terms?
Yes. So it is a metaphor. Um, so many people walk past opportunities every day.
Hmm.
They just don't see them. And
Hmm.
the reason they don't see them is because they're inside this architecture. Consider who I was prior to being an entrepreneur. I was this successful family house, white picket fence man who would take his kids to soccer and all those different things.
Yeah.
And there were opportunities that would pass me every day.
Hmm.
Call it a for sale sign on something or a for lease or whatever, a website, anything. There's opportunities everywhere. Never would see them. I would want to see the soccer game. I would, help coach, and it's just a different world. But once you start seeing opportunity,
Hmm.
you can't stop seeing opportunity. It's everywhere. So there's this mind thing that turns and you start seeing opportunity.
Hmm.
Now, the idea of the 1% door is once you've seen opportunities, you'll start to see them everywhere.
Right.
And most people who even start to see them don't do them. And so the opportunities are there. That's the door. But
Hmm.
only 1% of the people who actually see them will walk through
Hmm.
because the walking through the door takes effort.
Hmm. Beautifully
And
explained. Yeah.
I want you to know that it is a metaphor, but the opportunities are there for you. And you can walk through that door and have the
Hmm.
life that you could be living.
Amazing. And you're right. I mean, very few people actually see the door and take the opportunity.
Yeah.
But tell me, Neil, why did you choose stories instead of a
Ah,
traditional business or a self-help format?
it's really interesting because it started out. My father passed, and he would tell us stories. And I was thinking about my own legacy and things like that. And I have all these stories. I've lived probably 5 lives. I've traveled the entire world. I've tried so many businesses. I live in other countries from where I was born. I, I'm a black sheep. I am not normal. Okay, and so in the acknowledgement, in the dedication acknowledgement of my book, I talk about the question. Whenever somebody asks me, "Who would you like to have dinner with, living or dead?" I'm sure we've all heard that question.
Mm.
And my answer has been the same for the entire time it's been asked. And that would be someone who lived maybe 100 or 200 years prior to me being born that
Mm.
was in my family,
Mm.
so that I could sit with them and tell them, or I could hear their stories,
Mm.
tell them mine, and tell them, thank you. What you did was useful and it worked. So the end of my dedication says, to whoever is in my family that picks up this book 100 or 200 years from now, this is our dinner. That's
Mm.
how it started. And it turned out that all of my operating systems in business were a result of the stories.
Mm.
And I never made that connection until I put it all down on paper.
Fascinating.
And I said, oh my God, this is how it works.
Yeah.
It's the stories led to the operational ideas.
Fascinating. You write that many of us live inside systems we never consciously chose. What do you mean by this? And give me an example.
Um, yeah, so I mean, we're talking to people all over the world. So each country, each university, each family has their own systems. And it's really hard if I was to explain one of the systems that you would see it
Hmm.
from your own ideas. But I'll give you one that's so far from what a system that you would notice is that it's obvious that you would see it. Okay. I like to travel, as I said. I went to the Omo Valley of Ethiopia. It takes 3 days from the airport in Land Cruisers over no roads. It's really just dirt to get to the Omo Valley. And that's where supposedly man's first stood up and walked.
Mm.
Anyway, there's tribes that are still there that are very remote and they have their own rules and rituals and things. And we got to meet the people of the Hammer tribe.
Hmm.
Now, the Hammer tribe has a coming of age ceremony called bull jumping. You can look at it online, it's
Mm.
quite fascinating. But what I'll tell you about bull jumping is that the whole tribe either has to come together or some bad things will happen. Like if the boy doesn't succeed, he gets exiled from the tribe for
Mm.
life to wander in the wilderness. Okay? The men have to physically whip the women until they have scars on their backs
Okay.
because the scars show that they have helped this boy get to manhood. And in
Mm.
return, this boy has to dedicate his life to take care of this women.
Mm.
And the men don't want to give the women the scars. And the men have to hold the bulls so the boy doesn't fall. So everybody has joined into this
Mm.
architecture
Mm.
to make it happen. And no one in 1,000 years has chosen to do this. They were born into it. Now, here's the absurd part. Okay. This would end. The government wants it to end. The charities want it to end. You would think it's a horrible thing. I thought it was the most beautiful form of love I've ever seen in my life,
Hmm.
even though it was difficult to watch. But they couldn't afford to keep it going unless they brought in tourists
Wow.
because the father has
Mm.
to pay for all the food for 200 or 300 people that come for a multi-day event to his home. So, okay, so the architecture, you see this, they're born into it.
Mm.
It's bizarre and it's absurd. So, some of the things I point out in the book is our own architectures, is what originally why it was important and why the people who are in it believe it. But some of it has become absurd. And
Mm.
I point out to that some of those things, and you could do whatever you want with that information. It's just to show you that there are architectures all over the world, and you can choose which one you want to live your life in.
Amazing. Amazing. You use a phrase, you sometimes have to die a little to live the life you've always wanted. And it's a very powerful phrase. Which part of ourselves often needs to die?
Well, that was the I had said something about that just
Yeah.
recently before, and that's what I mean is that it, so the engineer, the guy who collected a paycheck, he needed to go, and he never had an employee before. He knew nothing about human resources. He knew about sales,
Mm.
so he used some of his skills in sales
Yeah.
to be someone in human resources.
Mm.
But the fighter pilot in me had to die because I was not a one man
Mm.
show.
Mm.
When you're a single solo entrepreneur, or a solo salesperson, or whatever, and you want to grow beyond yourself,
Mm.
that person, I say, and it's not literal, but that part of you has to die and be replaced with a different part of you.
Yeah. Yeah. And you told me I thought you was talking metaphorically when you said you've had 5 lives. But thank you. Now I understand.
Yeah,
But
that is slightly metaphoric, but it's
uh,
true
yeah,
in that what honestly what holds us back from growth is who we were.
correct.
And I go into the book and talk about things like recruiting investors, trying to get investors to
Mm.
join you. And what I found is anyone who knew the old me
Mm.
can't see the new me,
Correct.
and they don't invest in me.
Mm.
It's only the people who've seen me after I've become the new me that invest in me.
Yeah,
It was quite fascinating, and it's quite painful too, because
absolutely.
the people who you think love you the most, they are not the ones who, at least with
Absolutely.
me.
Absolutely. Very well said. Neil, I have time for 2 more questions.
Yes.
After someone finishes reading your book, what is the one question you hope they will ask themselves?
Hmm. I hope that they ask themselves where they really want to be.
Hmm.
And so first is where, then it's who.
Hmm.
And the realization, and you're going to go through a lot of different options, and the book's going to give you a lot of abilities to make change in your life
Hmm.
through some of the changes I've made. But the real question is whether or not you really have the why
Hmm.
is stronger than your resistance.
Hmm.
Your resistance to change is really difficult. The older
Hmm.
we get, the harder it is to change. But your why, as soon as it's stronger, all of a sudden you take that first step. But you got to know what direction you want that first step to go.
Hmm.
There is no straight line.
Yeah,
And I'm sure you would know, right? There's no straight line between where you are now and where you want to go.
absolutely.
But you can navigate it. You can
Correct.
navigate it through making good choices, but it has to have a strong why.
Hmm. Very nice. Very nice. And my last question, which is probably similar to the one I've just asked you. But if you had the opportunity to leave the audience with just one idea from your life's journey, what would it be?
Um, that the life you want is really possible.
Hmm.
It starts. It starts with education,
Yeah.
and moves into action, not big action. Like Tony Robbins talks about this great big action. I'm going to tell you, take one small step in the direction you want to go. See how it feels. Typically, what you'll find is that it's different than what you had imagined. And what I want you to notice about that is if it's different than what you imagined, then the whole thing that's been in your head this entire time is wrong.
Yeah.
And I found that I was wrong. I mean, quick story, I was looking for a new place where I wanted to live, and I made a list of places that I thought I'd want to live, and I had all the ideas of what I wanted. And what I realized when I went on the journey is I didn't know what I really wanted. All I really knew is what I didn't want. And so the next place I decided to live had the least of the things I didn't want.
Right.
And you don't know that until you take the first step.
Correct. But on that note, Neil, I just want to say what a fascinating conversation this has been with you. Thank you for talking to me about your own incredible journey. I love the way you say that you're a person who loves to travel, but along the way that you seem to have created businesses, you seem to have given a lot to communities, to society, and yet you seem to have had a lot of fun all along the way. Thank you again for putting all your thoughts down in your new book. I'm sure my viewers and listeners will look forward to reading your book. Thank you again for speaking to me, and good luck to you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.